Hi guys, I'm Suchita. I'm the co-founder of LBB. Welcome to LBB's Open House. It's a fantastic way for you to learn from the CEOs, CXOs, co-founders, CMOs and more of India's most compelling and most interesting businesses and startups.
In India, there's not a lot of appreciation. It's slowly changing. There's still not a huge appreciation for the role that the barista plays in making the coffee. Hotels or some cafes feel like, okay, I've spent several lakhs on this machine. I'm buying good quality beans from Blue Tokai, so automatically my coffee should taste good. When really the person who's operating that machine kind of make or breaks the coffee. And then there's sort of a perverse incentive where if the coffee tastes good, then the cafe wants to take the credit.
Yeah.
If it doesn't taste good, then they'll be like, oh no, I'm using beans from Blue Tokai. So what are you talking about? This is good coffee.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really help much in terms of building the brand. Though that being said, there are some partners that we work with who do a really excellent job, and we're, it's mutually beneficial. We try to promote them, and they promote us, and that's a very good relationship. But I would say the majority are not of that type.
Got it.
Then on
And
the
just
online
a
side,
quick question there, right? How do you sort of, because it's the both of you and now obviously you guys have a larger team than before, but how do you guys recalibrate all of these business verticals? Because, like you said, each of them has a fairly different margin and cost structure. Each of them also has a very different way of acquiring customers. So on your real estate, it's all about your location, which is a question that we'll get into in just a bit. But how have you guys struck a balance in between, one sort of way to acquire customers and make money versus the other? And also what made you want to choose cafes as that, as that predominant sort of vehicle of revenue generation for you guys?
yeah. I'll answer the cafe question first. It's not that, I mean, we just felt that the stage that India is at in terms of the premium coffee culture, the cafes were really necessary to educate consumers and grow the market. So now we've opened up 30 cafes. It's not that we want to open up 30,000 cafes. It's just that getting to a certain base within the country is important for us to kind of grow and seed that market. Going forward, it's not, we wouldn't want to keep opening up more and more cafes. We would utilize the cafes that we have and then push more towards the other parts of the business.
Got it. No, which totally makes sense. So essentially, cafes in a way for you is your customer acquisition cost.
Yeah.
It is your way to sort of build out other engines from a monetization perspective. So that takes me to, and I was telling Namrata earlier as well, I think you guys have made such super interesting counterintuitive bets in terms of locations. I was joking with Namrata. Champa Gully was like nothing. It was a bit of a dungeon before you guys sort of, stepped in and launched your cafe there. And now like a bajillion other places have opened up, right? Same with Vasant Vihar. I think you guys were the first ones to make a bit of a bet in Vasant Vihar as a location. And now we've obviously seen many more places open up over there. When you guys think of location, what are your operating principles? And obviously, as we learned from the example of WeWork, brokerage is the one thing that kills you specifically within retail as a business, right? So, what has been your sort of approach towards picking up locations, building cultures around those locations, building communities around those locations? And also finding a way around that, brokerage sort of fee and cost, which ends up being the Achilles heel of a lot of retail businesses.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we first started Blue Tokai, I think with Sedullah Jab, like you mentioned Champagali, it was such a fluke. We had Jagmag Thela come into us and say, there's like one go down that's, open. Why don't you guys look at it? And I remember Matt and I having this long discussion, and I remember saying like, this is in the middle of nowhere. Women will not come. I feel scared going there at night because there was nothing there, like you mentioned. And I think Matt told me, he's like, we can either take a neighborhood that is not finished and make it our own, or we can be like one of like a million in a neighborhood that's already created, and you get to add nothing to it. We had no idea that we would completely change that neighborhood. But I think because of that experience, we kind of, when we were finding other locations, went on that as well. We're like, well, if people are coming to Champagali, they'll come to other locations. And I remember having a conversation with you when LBB had opened in these different cities, being like, oh my God, we opened in Mahalakshmi. And we're seeing like a slower footfall than we would in Champagali. And I think that really made us realize like different cities in India have such different personalities. And the fact that people are willing to travel in Delhi gives us like a little bit more space to experiment with locations, because we know people will come. We've built a community in Delhi that will come to find us. In Bombay and Bangalore, I mean, Bombay, I feel like we're kind of stuck to the neighborhood that we open up in, because people will not travel long distances, which we didn't know until we opened. So it's been a lot of like trial and error now, where like we know that in Delhi we can take more risks, but in places like Bombay we can't so much.
Got it.
A lot of it goes to that. So in Champagali, we did a lot of activities and events and a lot of community building in that location to sort of kickstart that. In other neighborhoods, like, so we have a cafe in Bandra. It's a small cafe, so you can't really do any events, but just because of the natural environment that it's in, you don't really need to do that much community building there, because people just automatically are living in there and they pass by. So it's a sort of a balance between finding locations that are affordable, that we think that we can do some activities to get it going, and then picking maybe less affordable locations that are more prime, and just operating those as a more from a business point of view.
Yeah, but having a balance of both, like Matt mentioned.
Yeah, because I think there's no one size fits all. Even with the cafes, we have a very wide range of formats. We have very small kiosks, we have store-in-stores, we have 3,000 foot cafes, we have 600 square foot cafes. So it's not that we have a very fixed format, that a cookie cutter approach. Is that we look for opportunities within neighborhoods that we think have potential, and then see if we can make a concept fit there.
Got it. So if you had to sort of, give insights into what your formula is, right, when it comes to picking a location, and Ramita, the point that you brought up about behaviors in between different cities being starkly different from the other, I think that's also super interesting, right? Because the formula that you have for Delhi may not necessarily work in a Bombay where, Matt, like you said, people just don't travel, or a Bangalore also where people just don't travel, right, because of traffic and this, that, and the other. So if you had to give us a glimpse into what your formula is, what would that be? And when I say formula, not only in terms of launching a cafe, but also making it successful. Because, touch wood, I think the one thing, every single cafe of yours that at least I've been to any time of the day is always something, right? Like there's always like folks, and there's a lovely energy in the space. How have you guys been able to sort of, put that into a formula? And also what would be great to hear is what are the multiple, screw ups and fuck ups that would have happened along the way, which may have improved your formula over time.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that we choose neighborhoods is we look to see where our online customers are, because that gives indication of where there's pockets of people who appreciate good quality coffee. And so that becomes kind of the first filter. Then we have a projects team that has this, it's like 100-point checklist where they evaluate different parameters for each location. So size, rent, what are the brands in the neighborhood? What are the companies in the neighborhood? Is it purely residential? Is it office? If it's residential, are these towers leased out? What are the facilities available? Does it have power backup? Does it have water? So they have this 100-point checklist that they go through, and then any properties that meet the cut then get filtered up, and then one of the senior people, so typically me or another one of our co-founders, Shivam, will visit all of the spaces before we take a final call on it.
Got it.
But we just recently decided that all three of us at the end have to agree, because I think in the beginning it was sort of like one person liked it and we go with it, and so now it's like all three, because we're very different people. Yeah, so you have to have.
So there has been like so we opened up in Jaipur. Jaipur was we had a lot of online customers there. We had a bunch of wholesale customers who were ordering a lot of coffee. It seemed like it had great potential, but like each city has their own specific characteristics. we found that Jaipur is a market where you have to have a very strong face of the brand in the location, because it has, especially on the premium side, customers want to interact with that person and feel a little bit pampered and have their questions answered. It's not a place where you can just open up any cafe and let it run. And then having it just be one standalone cafe, it's not at a scale where we can invest a lot in marketing and putting in all of these senior resources into it.
Yeah.
So then I'm sort of an orphan. It's not doing as well as we expect, but at the same time, it's not worth putting in a lot of effort to get it there because it's just one location.
Got it.
Going forward, we would never open up one cafe in one city. We'd have to be able to open up 4 in a relatively short amount of time to make that work.
Got it. That makes sense. And I think also, going back to the same thing, right? Neither of you really have experience in like real estate, brokerage, opening a cafe, and all the complexities that come with it. Could you maybe talk about it from like your own, personal sort of journey in terms of how it's been to, go from that one cafe in Saidullah to now 30, managing that? How have you guys transformed, as leaders, co-founders, proprietors of your own business? And what are the nuances of the business that, us as customers take for granted, but that really, can make or break the cafe experience? So and just to sort of, give you guys an example, one of the folks who's on this call, they actually sent in a comment saying, what I love about Blue Tokai is your service. Right. So whenever you walk into a Blue Tokai, anyone from the barista to the folks, giving you your food, everyone's just nice. So how do you do that, right? Like how do you keep that alive, and what have you guys personally taken away from from the business that you built?
I feel like for me personally, when we opened up Champagali, it was just so popular so quickly, which is something we never ever thought it would be. Then we opened up Bombay, and I remember that being one of like, I think the most personally challenging things for me emotionally, as well as from a professional perspective, because we didn't know Bombay. We had a small child. It was just very, very hard. And I think what I took from that was that you really have to, like Matt said, now we have like this like 100-point checklist and all of that stuff. Like your systems have to be a lot stronger when you're opening up stuff. So now I've become so much more process oriented for anything. So you're like, like you mentioned with customer service, which is like a make or break thing for customers. You need to have like a very structured training program where baristas go through like everything on how to like technically make coffee, but also like, what is customer service? When we first started and we asked baristas what customer service was, they had no clue what it meant. They didn't know that when customers pay for their coffee, that is also a part of customer service. They had no clue. So I think like having this training, having like everything be a lot more structured. It doesn't mean that you're always going to win, for sure, but it definitely does mean that like the experience will be so much more homogenous, like across cafes.
Yeah. And if I could just ask a quick question there, right? Both you guys brought up the importance of a barista. And it's so interesting that you say that, because when I was talking to Anand from Greater Than, he spoke about the importance of a mixologist, right? Or a bartender, or even a server. And it's actually up to a server to drive the business for Greater Than, because if the server doesn't recommend a customer, ordering Greater Than, your funnel sort of gets screwed up from there on, right? How have you guys invested in your baristas? Because I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, which is for a customer. I have tried making Blue Tokai at home, and I am the clumsiest like cow on this planet, right? So my coffee tastes like shit. So when I have to have Blue Tokai, I will drag my ass to whatever cafe is close to me and pick up a cup from there, right? So how have you guys like been able to get barista training 101 done to the team?
So we do have, we have 3 training centers in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. And so there's a classroom part where all of the new hires have to go through. Then there's an on-the-job portion. Then they start in a lower position, and only when they're at a certain level do they get to make coffee and then interact with customers. So it's really about systemizing that. But we found that it's much easier in the beginning, we used to look for people who had previous coffee experience. So we get people from Starbucks, Costa, even CCD, because at least we felt that, okay, they're at least starting with some basic level of understanding.
Yeah.
Actually, it's much easier to teach someone how to make coffee than it is to teach someone how to give customer service and the soft skills associated with that, thinking on their feet. And that matters as much, if not more, than the quality of the coffee. Because let's say a barista serves a coffee that's 7 out of 10 on a 10-point scale, but they're very friendly, they're engaging to the customer, they give it to that person fast, it's the right order, that person is going to have a good experience. So, but if you serve a 10 out of 10 coffee and you're a jerk to the customer, it takes them 20 minutes, the coffee's cold, and or some other issue happens, then that destroys the whole experience. So it's very true that whoever the baristas are at the front line of really making or breaking that customer experience.
Yeah.
And to go to your point, your question earlier about how when you have 30 cafes, do you manage that? It's really about the people. So I would say there's probably 20% of the organization contributes to 80% of the results. And it's really identifying those that 20% and nurturing them so that they can then spread their knowledge and their abilities to the rest of the team. And so we've been fortunate that we found a few people in the beginning. A lot of it's been through just sheer luck. But those people have turned out to be really critical to our success. And so nurturing them and developing them and making them feel like they're part of the family has been incredibly important to us.
Yeah, and I also feel like there's always, like in the beginning when we started, there was always like this fear, like this inbuilt fear in people who who worked with us. And it was sort of like this thing of like, we're gonna do something wrong, we're gonna mess up. And it was always like very, very fear, just the culture of it. And I remember like just spending so much time with people and managers to know that, okay, like, we've got your back. No matter what happens, we've always got your back. And I think that has also transferred out. Like, how do you lead? Like, what is a leader? I don't necessarily think we communicate that very well, but I think we show people, or we display those skills a lot and interact as often as we possibly can, from everybody, from housekeeping to managers, like everyone, constantly. And I think that also helps people understand like what is our culture, more than like being taught it. They see that,
Got it.
I remember Matt would come home with like these just like back bruises because he'd been carrying like 60 kgs of like green beans on his back. And you just have to, do that. Like, that's just something that we've done from the beginning.
No, absolutely. And obviously, there's the both of you who started it, but if you guys could maybe talk a little bit about, because you mentioned team, what have been the other hires that you guys have made, and let's talk about both, right? The good stuff and the bad stuff. So what have been the hires that you've made that have actually totally changed the way you guys are being able to operate and scale your business? And also, what are the hires which at hindsight, you wish you had thought about again? To give you an example, I think a lot of what we've learned while building LBB is at the scale we're at, we don't need a CMO. Actually, all our employees are marketing officers in their own right? So marketing is not a function of a CMO. It is a function of literally every single person who's in the organization, because, to the point that you made, Matt, everything from the way you talk to a consumer to the way you create content in the case of LBB, or the way you deal with a client, all of that adds to to marketing and evangelism for the brand. So within both buckets, the hiring that you've made, which has just been like, this is amazing, should have done this earlier, rock solid guy or girl that's totally helped you leapfrog your business, and things that you may have done which you at hindsight regret.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people that we hired an operations head, I think 2 years in, and he actually ended up being the person who led all of the cafes. And so then he became the COO, and we made him a co-founder just because he was the person who was very instrumental.
That's awesome.
In leading that. Without him, real estate requires a particular skill set, negotiating with landlords and contractors and all of that, government, and that's not our skill set.
Sure.
And so that was very helpful. We also hired a coffee director from Australia. So Australia has this crazy specialty coffee culture, and they have a lot of knowledge and information that's not readily available here in India. And so a lot of the initial quality and roast profiles and everything was developed by me and Namrata. But being able to hire this person to bring in knowledge from a market where it's much more developed than India, and have that apply to our processes and the way that we were doing the coffee was extremely helpful. On the sort of the challenging parts, we've really struggled with marketing. We've had several people in the role, and it's been very difficult to find people that are sort of aligned with us. Because it's also hard to come into an organization that's already at some level of scale and then lead a department that's been kind of managed by us and step in with their ideas and fit seamlessly. I think one thing that we should have been doing is just interviewing for people for jobs that aren't really available yet, but maybe in the future that we foresee hiring. Because what typically ends up happening is that we have a need that's very pressing, and so then at that point we do a rush hiring process, and then it kind of leads to a suboptimal outcome. Whereas if we were always speaking to people and always interviewing people, we would have had some relationships that are already in the pipeline, and it would be easier to find the right fit for that.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important, because you never know when you need someone to step in. And I also think, as co-founders, you underestimate how long it takes to find a great person. And also that whole thing of not settling, on the first great candidate you find, right? It takes time.
Yeah. It's really hard, actually. So there hasn't been a single person that we've hired that I haven't wanted to fire beginning, and a lot of those people have turned out to be incredible employees. So I think there's also a lot of luck. We've gotten better at sort of narrowing the funnel, but at the same time, we haven't yet nailed it where I can say that, okay, yes, this person is going to succeed and be a great addition.
Yeah. So we have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to shoot a couple of quick questions your way, right? I think, so one actually, someone on the call just dropped in a quick question, and this ties in with another one that I had for you. You guys are amazing at partnering with like-minded brands. I think that's something that you guys do a stellar job of. So Manas Gupta has asked, how do you identify the right long-term partners such as White Farms, Mudslings, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, or even folks like Bhari Sons and the likes, right, who have been partners of yours in terms of, cafe launches. So could you maybe talk a little bit about how you've gone about finding the right partners, even something as simple as like Keep Cup, right? I discovered Keep Cup at Blue Tokai. I actually also found Mason & Co. at Blue Tokai. And I myself have found a lot of really great brands at your cafes. So what is it about being a great partner? Why is that important to you guys? And also if you could maybe talk a little bit about how you go about finding the right partners.
I think we've also been really, really fortunate in that a lot of people have approached us to say, like, are you interested? And I think every time, no matter how good of a fit you think you are, it's always like, you just always get lucky. We also have like a really good community management team that's always on the lookout. We have, again, like we have a few points that we're always looking for. Like it has to be an artisanal product. It has to kind of be like homegrown. If it's family run, that's amazing. So a lot of our partnerships like fall into all of this. I remember, for example, Suchali, who we keep her pastries now, she had called us and, we went over to her place and we saw how hard she worked and how she did everything herself. And it was so reminiscent of how we started our business. Yeah. And instantly we knew without like a shadow of a doubt that this is a good partnership. So I think like you're also drawn to people who have the same values as you, but then you can also tell how involved those people are in their own business. And everybody we work with, I think one of the big things is that they've been incredibly involved in like what they do. Even though they might have grown from when they started, their values are very, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's not. I mean, we've also made mistakes on the partnership front. Like, I would say, especially when we went into some partnerships where we did it for more financial reasons than for alignment with the brand, those have very quickly soured. So I think now it's much more important that you're eye to eye with that partner in terms of what their vision is and how they work and how they execute things, because ultimately you have to work with them on a day-to-day basis. And if it's ultimately just about like a trade-off for commercial reasons between two people, then it's very more likely that it's not gonna work out. And we've also learned, like, I'm sure there's some partners that we've had who are like, oh my God, those guys are a nightmare to deal with. And so we've learned also like how to work better with people along the way too.
Yeah, I think that with partnerships has been interesting because you kind of have a conversation or you have like an email exchange and then you're like, yeah, let's do this. But as opposed to, no matter how well you get along, to have a contract of like, here are the expectations from both sides. I think that has been our biggest learning. Like, if you get into a partnership, always make sure you have a contract.
Yeah. I think it's and if I could just segue from that point, when you guys reflect on the past 6 years, right? When I reflect on 6, 7 odd years of LBB, I usually want to drink a lot. Especially tequila. But when you reflect on your journey, right, and you sort of and I know this is a bit of a cliche question, but when you sort of think about how you guys have changed, how do you think you guys have changed? What were you like before, which isn't really a reality for you anymore? Have you become more patient, less patient? Like,
I've become better about change. Change used to freak me out. Like, I needed to be in control. I needed to know what's going on. And like, this situation would have killed me, And I'm weirdly at ease with it now because it's just like a constant, like everything is always changing,
I think Namrata has become like an amazing manager from when we started to now. I mean, I think just the way that she structures herself and structures her team members, it's really, I have a lot to learn from her on that. And I think for me also, it's difficult to go from a small scale company where you're involved with everything and you're like working alongside people side by side, and how do you translate that into an organization where you have several hundred people? Because my management style has always been to lead by example, but I can't do that for every cafe in the country. There's some cafes that I've never even been to. So figuring out how to sort of translate that our company values and how we work to people that we have very little interaction with is something that we spend more time working on and figuring out solutions to.
Got it. And when you think back to your points of inflection, right? What were the triggers that you guys saw over the past 6 years that made you want to say, what, okay, cafe business making sense, let's open 30 more, right? Or let's scale up our partnership, say with Suchali or whoever else. So, because another question that came up in the Q&A that we asked all the 56 attendees to send through was, how do you know, right? If someone's an aspiring entrepreneur, how do they know when this is the right time to sort of, take a leap? Especially when you may not have, raised a lot of external capital or have validation, from a vanity metrics perspective. In terms of you being able to take the next, couple of steps. So for you guys, what have been the points of inflection and what sort of made you say, you know what, this shit makes sense, man. I want to, go all in.
I mean, I think we've done everything in a fairly stepwise manner. It wasn't that we didn't go from at roasting coffee at Namrata's house to opening up 30 cafes. There were lots of interim steps along the way, and though we have raised outside capital, it's never been a huge amount, and we've always done things in a way that whatever decision that we took, we had reasoning behind it. But if it didn't work out, then it wouldn't jeopardize everything.
Got it.
So I think in that way, it was very. We never took any kind of bet the house type risks. the big inflection point was when we decided to raise outside capital in the first place, because we started it just the two of us, and so I would say at that time we felt that the opportunity was too large. There were really no established players in the premium coffee space, and if we didn't raise outside capital and scale the business, then someone else would, and that would be an opportunity that we had lost.
Yeah.
So once we had this idea of, okay, maybe we'll move to Goa and we'll be on the beach and we'll have like a small cafe roastery there, and it'll just be like this mom and pop business, or we could raise outside capital and scale, and we chose the latter.
Do you guys regret it?
Sometimes. I don't think there's, there's many days where the idea of just, coming in at 9 and leaving at 5 and having the weekends off seems very appealing.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's definitely a sense of accomplishment of where we were then to where we are now, and especially at least in terms of our team, about the people that we've been able to work with and to see them grow and get a lot of good feedback from customers has been really encouraging.
Yeah. Got it. I'm just going to let everyone on the call know you guys can send me questions on chat. We have literally 5 minutes left. So if you guys have any questions, send them in. I'm going to address the elephant in the room, right? Everything is basically come to a standstill. Thanks to coronavirus. And though I am sure if we could survive the past 7 years, we will survive this too. How have you guys, sort of dealt with the ramifications of COVID? And also, what are the kind of opportunities that you guys are seeing as a consequence of COVID? So, for example, in your guys' case, fortunately, you still have delivery that's up and running. So everyone on the call, as soon as you're done with this call, order from Blue Tokai. I've done that plug. What are the opportunities that you guys see coming up as a consequence of COVID? And how are you guys, professionally, and personally sort of wrapping your heads around how to manage the ramifications of all offline businesses being shut courtesy coronavirus?
Yeah, I think it's one thing for us is that having this uncertainty way, especially because the majority of our business is in the cafes and the majority of staff are employed at the cafes. So there's kind of this cloud hanging over all of that, and the employees feel that too. So for us, it was very important to come up with a plan of what we're going to do with people's salaries and with people's jobs, and to have internal clarity on that, and then also communicate that to people, because I think uncertainty really is just paralyzing, and whatever hard steps need to be taken, we've made the decisions, and now we can at least move on to the execution phase. In terms of opportunities right now, it's like, even though deliveries are open, business is at 10-15% of what it was. So it's not really, that's just a measure to try to get some revenue in during this period to help preserve whatever people's jobs and salaries that we can.
Yeah.
But we do see a lot of opportunities in the online and on the retail side of the business. Our online sales have grown quite a bit. It's still challenging getting the logistics working, the couriers working, and getting onboarded with some new Big Basket and Grofers is going to take time. But I think in the short term, brands who can make their products more available at some of these alternative distribution points will see opportunities there. But I think that the physical spaces are going to take quite a while to bounce back.
Yeah. Namrata, do you want to add something? Or I'll jump in?
I think Matt covered it up. I mean, I also feel like this is really the time to make your product as accessible as possible. We had launched the Easy Pour right before this happened, and we had no idea, but people who don't have brewing equipment at home are now really, really cherishing this product. And I just feel like whatever you can do to make whatever product you have, if your shop is shut, but to get it out there in a way that's really, really easy for people to use at home.
Got it. Which brings me to another question that someone's just sort of dropped in. Do you guys think there's a difference in between your customer who is perhaps ordering your coffee to their home versus a customer who's stepping out, to drink coffee at your cafe. And really where this question is going is, do you think that Indians have adopted brewing premium specialty coffee at home, compared to what they, had before?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely more people are brewing coffee at home than before, and now they're forced to. So we have been getting like desperate messages from people about like, oh, how can I get some coffee? I'm stuck on instant coffee. But I think that there is a large percent of the cafe sales are people who are going there to maybe to work and or to have a meeting or to meet friends. And for them, the environment and the coffee were all part of a larger package, not necessarily that they had to come just to get that cup of coffee. And so I think that part of the business, that's not going to come back anytime soon. And the hope is that we've converted some of those people over toward making coffee at home, but I still think it's not the majority.
Got it. And when you guys sort of think of all the progress that you've made, and when you also sort of circle back to your initial assumption, right, which is that Indians want premium specialty coffee, has there been a change in that assumption? Have you been overwhelmed, underwhelmed by the market? Have you also had to adapt to constraints around around the target addressable market? This question comes up to us a lot as well, right? What's been your takeaway on how large is the market for premium coffee, or is it just coffee is a market that you guys are now trying to tap into through your cold brews and your easy pour and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of premium is so we don't want to make it inaccessible. I think that anybody, like not anybody, but most people, given the choice between something that tastes good and not so good, is going to choose the one that tastes good.
Yeah.
Now, it's not obvious that premium coffee tastes good to a lot of people, right? Because a lot of people are adding lots of milk and sugar, and they're really diluting the flavor of coffee. But once you're able to push people along and they get exposed to it enough times, then no one wants to slide back. It's very difficult if you're drinking good quality coffee then to have a Nescafe or a CCD. You'd probably rather have a tea or a juice than drink that.
Yeah.
So it requires a lot of effort to push people along in this journey, but once they reach that point, there's very little slide back. And in terms of the size, I think that I wouldn't say we're under or overwhelmed. I think it's kind of about where you would expect. I think there's a lot of new brands that have come in and they have their own target market that they're reaching to. They do things in a slightly different way. I think that's helping grow the market overall. It's not a point, it's definitely not saturated. I think there's room for more companies to come in and do new things. At the same time, I don't think it's so easy that anybody can just open up a coffee shop and expect to have business flow in. You need to have a very clear positioning and clear strategy and good product in order to succeed.
Yeah, I think also when we started, we also like changed what we had to offer based on what people were saying. They really liked our coffee, but they wanted a darker roast than what we had liked. We developed all these roast levels based on what we were hearing from customers as well, which is not something that we would have felt was like amazing, but for sure people were like, no, we want your Vienna, we want your French roast, we want yours, not just like any other one.
Yeah.
So I think they know what specialty coffee is, but they do want it maybe in a way that's like a little bit different from what, we initially had thought it would be.
Got it. That's interesting. Last question from all of us, which is, are there any books, podcasts, articles, things that you've read that have, helped you become better, CEOs, COOs, CMOs, co-founders, decision makers, any of that you can share with all of us?
I think your Scott Rao thing.
That's very coffee specific.
That is very coffee specific.
That's very coffee
No, but tell us coffee specific.
So there's this guy, Scott Rao. He has books on roasting, on brewing. He has an Instagram page. He has a lot of good knowledge. There's this book, Making a Manager. That was a good book.
The Julie Zhao one.
Sorry?
The Julie Zhao one, the Facebook.
Yeah, the Facebook one.
That was a good book.
I thought that was a good book.
I read something on like, I feel like I'm very obsessed with Kaizen right now, like, because I feel sometimes for me to incorporate, like if you want to be as structured as possible, but when you're talking to a team that may not be very structured or very different thinking in their outlook, I get very overwhelmed. And how do you introduce this concept, or how do you act like a leader in situations like this? And I think like all these books that are on Kaizen and management are sort of like, just do it really slowly, you know, like really, really slowly. And I think that's been really helpful for me in a personal way, as well as like a professional way in leading as well and managing as well.
Got it. And anyone within the entrepreneurial space who you guys look up to, a brand that's been built that you think is iconic and are inspired by?
Oh my God, I was just thinking about this, and I like literally just have like a brain freeze moment.
I mean, I think for us in the coffee, like what Blue Bottle has been able to do, I think is inspiring to go from.
Luckin, not anymore after the $300 million fraud.
No, that's Luckin. That's Luckin.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I mean, not Luckin anymore. Yeah.
No, it's interesting because I remember when we were fundraising, everybody was, all of the VCs were saying, oh, Luckin Coffee is doing this. Why aren't you doing a strategy similar to that?
Yeah.
Now I'm sure.
Their opinions have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but Blue Bottle is very
reversing the question, who are you, so that we can get some inputs as well. Who, like, are there people that you're reading that you feel like from a management perspective has been really helpful for you?
I think, I mean, I feel like I've been overcompensating for not having done an MBA for like my whole life, and not being an engineer. So I feel like all I do is literally just consume as many books as is possible. My team has this issue with me. In one of our feedback sessions, one of my colleagues was just like, can you stop reading? Something, and then you want to implement it the next day, and it is disastrous for the rest of us. But jokes aside, I think any good autobiography, is works for me. Because I think a lot of, I think there's a difference in between being a maker, a manager, and an executive. I think, it took me some time to go from being a maker and a builder to, becoming a manager. And I think now I'm trying to make the transition from becoming a manager to becoming an executive. And any autobiography, so whether it's Shoe Dog or Onward by Howard Skulls, or, any reading on the McDonald's story. I love these two books called Competing Against Luck by Clayton Christensen, who I am obsessed with, and I was very upset when he passed away earlier this year. But he basically talks about thinking through the lens of jobs to be done, right? So, and really the question any entrepreneur needs to ask him or herself is, what job are you doing, and who are you doing the job for? So I end up deflecting on these, but I think I think my colleagues have reminded me more often than not that I need to stop reading and stop guinea pigging on them with all of like this random stuff that I keep stumbling upon. No, but thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you for introducing all of us who used to be plebs to like cortados and flat whites and cold brew and pour overs and everything that you guys have done. It is truly, truly remarkable. I know coronavirus has gotten a bunch of us down, but I hope you guys realize that you've really built something phenomenal. And if nothing else, you've made us appreciate coffee, which is really, really, really awesome. Thank you guys so much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And I hope to meet you on the other side of Corona.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. See you guys. Thank you, and everyone for joining. Thank you so much. See you guys. Bye-bye.